Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back again with another episode of 10-Minute Testing. So, today we're trying out another of Konami's latest attempts to get a bunch of players who quit right around the time Cyber Dragon was released to show back up to regionals by printing legacy support. A couple of days ago, they released some more stuff for Six Sams, a deck that struck fear into my little boy heart back when I was trying to play Cyberdarks in 2005. So, let's jump into Deck Edit and see if Shi-En and the boys have evolved at all during their 10-year absence. So here's the list. Now the first thing you'll probably notice is that while there's a fair amount of change, the deck still uses most of the cards from previous iterations of the deck. Since Six Sam has gone through so many different iterations, I will give you a little bit about the history of the archetype, a little bit about what I hope the deck can do, and as always, the card by card. So first, Six Sam is a deck that is well known for evolving with the times. When Synchro were just coming out, the deck received one of the most historically overpowered Synchro monsters of all time, Shi-En. When Xyz were becoming the new hotness, they got a new Xyz monster that, making up for Shi-En's brokenness, was incredibly weak. And now that Lynx are the next big thing, Konami is rewarding us with a fusion monster. I'll take it. Six Sams are a bunch of warrior monsters from all different attributes that usually get benefits from having tons of different samurai on board at once. Their playstyle has evolved a lot over the years. They used to be a deck that was content special summoning Grandmasters, then they became a Turbo Synchro Shi-En style deck with the help of Elder, Aestheticism, and Kagamusha, then a special summoning deck based around Kizun and Kaigeki, and finally some sort of weird hybrid of all of these strategies with the new Smoke Samurai monsters. These monsters all deal with the Banish Zone, moving monsters around and banishing to protect the ones you already have on board. They're interesting. We're trying a lot of different things with this deck. Since these cards just came out, I'm trying to play with as many of them as possible, but since they don't combo well and almost all rely on normal summons, we may have a bit of a problem. We're playing 3 of all the new guys alongside fan favorites and stellar old engine cards like Kizun and Kaigeki and Elder and Kagamusha, but we're also trying some of the new Banish-oriented stuff as well. Since a deck with medium-sized dudes that can reliably make a spell negator just sort of screams, please play me in a stun deck, we're also playing some stun elements like Quakings and the Macro Brothers. Hopefully we will make a deck that constrains our opponent's plays while rewarding our incredibly skillful play of summoning Shi-En over and over again. So, on to the card by card. First, we have 3 copies of Shadow Genba. Now, these new ones aren't great, I'll disclose at the beginning, but it's important that we have different attributes so we can meet the condition on the fusion monster. This guy, when normal summoned, adds a banished Six Sam to your hand and can self-banish to prevent destruction of exactly 1 Six Sam. Next is Shadow Kizaru. When this card is specialed by, say, Kaigeki, then it lets you add a Six Sam with a different attribute to your hand, which conveniently misses basically every relevant one. No Kizun, no Elder, no Kagamusha, etc. After that are 3 of the Water Shadow Six Sam, who can banish 2 Six Sams from your face-up board or grave to special Six Sam from grave. It also protects from grave in the same way that Genda does and Kizaru as well. Maybe you're seeing a theme with these shadow cards. After that, we have the Six Sam that we all know and love already. 3 copies of Kizun, who specials himself when you've got a different Six Sam. 3 copies of Kaigeki, who has a weird typing and a Goblinberg effect. 3 Elder and 3 Kagamusha to both have a critical mass of guys for Kaigeki and also make Shi-En with Aestheticism. For spells, we have 3 copies of Smoke Signal, which adds a level 3 or lower Six Sam from your deck to your hand. Just an absolutely absurd card. 2 copies of United. We're only playing 2 because a lot of the time pot is better. 3 copies of Aestheticism for those 6 Shi-Ens. 2 copies of Desires, and of course 1 copy of Reinforcement of the Army to find any warrior we want to, and 1 Dimensional Fissure. This is an interesting include. I figure since these monsters do actually benefit very little from being banished, like you can add it back with Genda, it's probably worth playing these cards that shut down most meta decks. For traps, we have 3 copies of Quaking, the Solemn Boys, and 1 copy of Macrocosmos for the same reason. In the extra, we have 1 of the fusions. So this card requires 3 Six Samurai monsters with different attributes. It contact fuses, which is good news for us because we don't have to devote main deck space to playing Polymerization. He also once per turn can banish a Six Sam from hand or field is what it says on the card, but it allows you to use Graveyard on YGO Pro as well to banish 1 card on the field, and like the other Shadow Six Sams, he can prevent destruction from grave by banishing himself. 1 copy of Coral Dragon, 1 copy of Armades, 1 Catastor, 2 Shi-En. That rounds out our entire Synchro lineup. Afterwards, we have 1 Heroic Champion, 1 Castel, the Utopias, an Abyss Dweller, a Tomato Dragon for our 4s, and then for our 3s, we have a Totem Bird for 2 Kaigekis, a Grand Pulse, and a Dante. So with that, let's jump into the games. So our first match is a little bit of a blink and you'll miss it style of game. It's against Trickstar Burn, which people expect to be alright in the upcoming format. We've opened quite well. We can make Shien. We have a Pot of Desires. We probably are going to get off to the races this game. We'll start by using Pot of Desires. We find a 6-Sam United, which means we'll play that before we Aestheticism in order to get an Elder, using our Kagamusha and Elder to make Shien, drawing 2 cards, one of which is Macro, which we will flip in our opponent's draw step. So this actually outs a lot of pretty good meta decks. A Macro and a Shien are hard to chew through. Our opponent will attempt to do so by using Desires. I elect not to negate the Desires. I've seen a Disturbance strategy, so I know that they're on the Lycra Cyclica deck, so I figure I'll try and negate the light stage and hope they banish one or don't have a second, and lucky for me they don't. They BM by discarding their entire hand and concede. Our second match is up against Electromagnetic Warriors, basically the redheaded stepchild of the ABC generation. We've opened pretty poorly, actually. This is about what a brick looks like in this deck. Thankfully, we do have a nice little swath of stun traps here, a Strike, a Quaking, and a Dimensional Fissure. Our opponent has similarly opened poorly. This is not a very good open against anything other than ours, specifically because they get to set a Twin Twisters and pass it back. We don't draw into anything relevant, and I figure it's time to get the Hatsume beats on. We can do 1600 and maybe figure out a way to get a Shien next turn. Our opponent's going to Twin Twisters, and at least we get to banish the Block Dragon, but we lose our Solemn Strike, which is unfortunate. Because our deck is redundant for being a stun deck, we did draw into a Solemn Warning, and now we're kind of off to the races. The old 2-turn Shien might just be enough. I'll negate this trade-in, just sort of assuming that 2-for-1ing is pretty important. Of course, it does not do enough, and they trade into an Alpha, which we will Solemn, immediately prompting the concession. Our third and final game is against one of the most interesting decks I've ever seen just hang around YGO Pro ladder. This guy is playing basically every possible card that's good with Lawnmowing, and as you may recognize, it's not a very good time to be casting this card, but this man has done a pretty good job of drawing it. We've opened okay, but since we have a way to make the fusion, I'm resigned to doing so and seeing if he's any good. Our opponent is going to fire off this Lawnmowing and mill 21 cards, including, oh my god, a Backjack, a Hedgehog, a Shadow Mist, and a Squamata. The Squamata is going to send a Falco, I believe. The Shadow Mist is going to get a Plasma. The Falco is going to reborn itself, etc., etc. Then the Spore is going to animate from Graveyard. Then normal summon the Zephyros the Elite to go into an Omega. Play this Tyranno-Gate Infinity and return it for Zephyros the Elite. Banish 7 for Fairy Tale Snow. And on a 4 Strix. And I have no idea what to imagine here. They'll go ahead and set this copy of Phantom Knight's Wing, then return Backjack to Grave. I'll use Kageki's effect, Heal Chain Omega, and the Night's Wing on this 4 Strix. Thankfully, I do still have a good target, and I can go into the fusion. Now, using the fusion, I banish the Falco, and I know I can't kill this card, but attacking it just makes me feel a little bit better. Our opponent is going to use 4 Strix, then Foolish Burial themselves into a Phantom Knights of Ragged Cloak, send my card to 1200 attack, get back Hedgehog, use Wing to get back Ancient Cloak, go into Plasma, equip my guy, use Soul Shade Force to go into Infinity, and then attack for about 20 quadrillion points of damage. So we're back with the deck. That last game was a thoroughly convincing defeat. This is unfortunate because routinely I just felt like these new cards were just very slight upgrades over the existing unplayable Water and Fire 6 Samurai. They have all the same weaknesses of those cards. They're clunky, they rely on normal summons, they aren't very good at protecting themselves, and unfortunately they just don't bring too much new to the table. Their effects are interesting, sure, but they're incredibly slow, and the banish to protect one individual 6 Samurai is pretty irrelevant in today's meta. Having said that, Shien is still an alright card, and while these new cards and their fusion-oriented play may not be good enough to bring 6 Samurai back to its rightful throne as the terror of 2005, they certainly have compelled me to play a more streamlined version of the deck sans these awful new ones. So that's that. I hope you enjoyed my passive-aggressive revenge on those nerds who brought 6 Sams to locals when I was in middle school. If you want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, I'm on twitch.tv/monobluetron every Monday and Wednesday from 10 to noon Eastern Standard Time, links in the description. And if you have an idea for a certain deck or archetype you want me to play on a future episode of this show, let me know in the comment section below, and I will do my best to accommodate you. Otherwise, I'll see you Tuesday.